and I really wanted to make my own. And I actually originally Runescape was going to be a text-based game, so I was just copying the existing ones, but I very quickly realised that there was thousands of them and no one would notice it. So I thought, right, I'm going to distinguish mine by adding graphics. And my work that I'd already done in Java games meant that I was sort of prepared to do that because I wanted to keep this accessible, play anywhere, dip in whenever you want, which you don't have with the traditional box title, but the text-based mods did have.
Yeah.
So I started trying to make a text-based mod, a graphical mod. And that's what originally it was called Devious Mud. Hinted that it was inspired by mud. This is the precursor to RuneScape. It was actually quite advanced in some ways. It had things like a resizable game window, which RuneScape didn't actually get for about another 8 years.
There we go, resizable game window. Whee!
All the graphics obviously drawn by a combination of myself and Ian. We didn't have a graphics artist, and we didn't really finish this game. Extremely unfinished, because I realised about halfway through that it was rubbish. So I canned it and started Runescape instead.
So here we've got a fight sequence from Devious Mud. Do you want to talk us through what's going on here?
Yeah, so you pick up items, you can equip them, all of it looks a bit familiar to RuneScape Classic. Some of the graphics are actually the same. See if you can spot the graphics are the same. The arrows down there are the same graphics.
Yeah, that shield looks similar.
A lot of these graphics were actually drawn on an Ansari ST, which is another reason why they don't look so good, because that's really not a good platform for trying to draw graphics on. Yeah, you see the animation is high-tech.
We decided to speed it up here because it was taking a bit of a while.
I drew that beetle.
You drew that beetle?
That was my beetle.
Cool.
That beetle's actually at Destruction Imminent. Yes.
Oh, really?
Not good graphics for Destruction Imminent. Then we stole it.
So here we go. We've got Devious Mud running next to RuneScape Classic. On the right-hand side is Devious Mud character going and interacting with the sheep herder. For the sheep shearer quest, I should say, who in this version I believe is called Marcus, and there's Farm Fred.
And it even has a reference to the Thing.
Yeah, both games talk about the Thing, and obviously the Thing ended up inspiring all sorts of ideas, which then led to all the Penguin quests. So the Thing first came about in Devious Mud, so you think about that's what 10 years ago?
Yeah, exactly. I originally started Devious Mud in '98.
Right.
So 10, 11, 12 years ago, yeah.
Cool. Right, Paul. So, what first inspired the content then that first made it into RuneScape?
The content from RuneScape has come from all sorts of different sources. When you're playing games, you sort of see good ideas all over the place, so it's a bit of a mishmash of all sorts of things. One of the main inspiration, well, there's all sorts of inspiration, we'll talk about the one up to there. That's a game called Emperor's Treasure. That was a game which was sold through, that's a board game which was sold through TSR's Dragon magazine, and that gave me certain ideas of how I felt a fantasy world map should be laid out. So there's certain similarities, and you've just got very defined zones of sorts of terrain, and then you've got cities splotched about with roads connecting it very much in a similar style to how we did RuneScape Classic. So there's a RuneScape Classic map there, which has certain similarities. You've got the same sort of different coloured zones, so the dark green's the forest, and the light green's plains, and the sort of greeny blue colour down the bottom's the swamp. That's not actually a map of RuneScape Classic. That was the plan I was going to do of RuneScape Classic. There's certain similarities you might notice. There's a lot of familiar names like Varrock and Lundbridge and things like that. Ooh, it's gone, sorry. One thing you might notice is that the core area around Varrock and Warlock's Tower and the haunted house and stuff is very similar, except that it's actually a mirror image of what RuneScape is in today. And there is a good reason for that. And the reason for that is the early map editor, which Andrew made for me, it had a little bit of a bug where everything that you drew in the map editor, when you came out in the game, it actually came out as a mirror image. So I actually, to start off with, I was actually following my map precisely in the map editor. And the game came out the other way around. So it was still easier to map it back to front and then carry on like that. So yeah, I got my Y space. Now, the game was actually upside down, and I didn't realise. I just turned the camera the other way up. So I didn't realise I'd generated all the geometry upside down. And I didn't realise ages later that meant it was a mirror image.
Yeah, crazy. So it must have been a lot of work for just the two of you to make a game like that. How did you decide who did what?
I mean, yeah, the division of label was very similar to all the earlier games we made. I focused on programming the engine. I was mostly interested in could I make it so that one player walking around on one computer would show up on the screen of another computer. If one person spoke, would the other person hear them speak, trying to get everything synchronizing over the network, trying to get it running over extremely low bandwidth connections, because back in those days everyone was on dial-up.
Indeed.
Trying to get it running on incredibly low spec server hardware, because the plan originally was I would run it on an old 486 a friend of mine had that he didn't want anymore. So a lot of work sort of trying to, which actually sounds crazy, but actually turned out to be a really good approach, because it meant that when the game unexpectedly suddenly started having thousands of players, it still worked.
So, and I remember you telling me that the whole family kind of got involved with doing
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I sort of press-ganged anyone I possibly could into helping me make my games in general. So, you know, I persuaded Paul to do graphics, Ian to do graphics, Paul to do levels. My mum did some of the graphics in Runescape Classic. She did the camel and the bat, the bear. So, yeah, pretty much got everybody helping me out. All my friends testing it.
And how about your early sound effects? How did you create those?
Oh yeah, they were made with a microphone in my mum's kitchen. So the cooking sound in Runescape Classic I made by recording my mum frying some bacon. It was all very high budget stuff.
Awesome.
The fishing noise filled up the sink with water. Andrew dropped something in and it made a nice splash noise, and it also drenched the kitchen. So yeah, the top made a big mess.
So here we go, some early Runescape Classic images.
This is the concept. Yeah, we actually had concept art for Runescape Classic for some of the images.
So these were like properly drawn and then they ended up scanned down and then you
the Runescape Classic art was actually hand drawn and then scanned and then shrunk, which didn't actually work very well, which is part of the reason some of it didn't look very good.